Okay, so as promised, a quick video on shin splints. Oh, where to start? I get asked this a lot, hence why it was one of the first things that I wanted to kind of talk about this week. So shin splints covers, the term covers a lot of different possible diagnoses of what's going on in the shins. So it's a bit of a big conversation to have. That said, for the most part, for the runners that I deal with, beginners, ladies, pelvic floor issues, those kinds of things, then shin splints tends to refer to what I would call, just an overloading of the shins and resulting in pain. The technical term for it is medial tibial stress syndrome, and what that refers to is it's the inside edge of your shin here, so the medial side of your tibia, which is this big bone that goes to your shin bone, medial tibial stress syndrome. So it's a stress that's been put on the inside edge of that bone. So the research would suggest that more females than men suffer from it. It usually comes with an increase in running distance or intensity, something like that, which, if you're a new runner, that's why a lot of new runners can experience shin splints. It's associated with stuff going on at the pelvis. So when you take a step, the other side of the pelvis should stay relatively level. You will get some shift, but if you've got one side that's dropping, indicating a weakness somewhere in the centre, the hips, the core, that kind of stuff, it can lead to a tendency to develop shin splints. If you're inefficient, so again, if you're a new runner and you're not very efficient in your stride, that can not help. What else? Tendency to rotate the thigh bone inwards as you run, and also landing with a straighter knee than is ideal, so less knee flexion. And you can kind of see some of these, you can kind of see, well, if I'm not very good at managing load, the harder I hit the floor or the longer I'm on the floor, those kinds of things, the more stress I'm going to be putting through those bones. So if you've got a longer stride rate or you land heavy on your heel, those kinds of things. There is an association with step rate as well. So if you're sort of 164 cadence step rate, 164 thereabouts or below, you're more likely to experience shin splints as opposed to somebody with a higher step rate, 174 and above, I think was what was in the research. Then you're less likely to experience shin splints, and again, that comes down to being light and springy on your feet as opposed to heavy and spending more time on each foot as it's on the ground. You kind of want to be springing away. Easier said than done if you've got shin splints. What else did I want to talk about? So there's also a tendency for women to run, instead of like so, they run like so, where the feet are coming under them and into the middle. So there's a lot to be said for keeping the legs almost like they're on train tracks rather than letting them kind of cross. Shin splints is one of those, is definitely one of those things, one of those conditions where having some kind of running analysis can be really useful, because you can then start to see, have I got a pelvic drop when I run? Do my knees come towards each other? Do my feet cross? Am I landing out in front of me? What is my step rate? Those kinds of things, and they all show up in running sort of gait analysis. In terms of, with quite a few, plantar fasciitis even, Achilles tendons, calf pains, these kind of things. Some of these things you can run through. If the pain is low enough, 2 out of 10, something like that, again, very subjective, but if the pain is low enough, you can run through it, and there's some argument for that strengthening the tissues, that it contributes to helping to strengthen the tissues just by running on them. And the rules for that would be, if 24 hours later it feels worse, then you've done too much. But if it's not getting worse and it's staying at that really low level, there's something to be said for kind of running through it and strengthening it that way. Unfortunately, with shin splints, that's not really the case. they don't really respond that well to that, and kind of understandably, it is bone that the muscles are sort of pulling on the bone and creating that irritation around the bone. There is some theories that there's an imbalancing strength or imbalancing tightness and restriction. So if your calf muscles at the back, so the chunky ones at the back, are super tight and super strong, and they're not letting you get full range of movement at the ankle, and so the front of the muscles on the front, which are in comparison less strong, and that's purely because you need these ones more than you need these ones to get about, then your body will start to lay down tissue at the front in an effort to kind of stop those muscles overworking. So these are super strong, they're doing a ton of work. When I say strong, not in a particularly good way, they're kind of overworking, are super tight. Then you get this pull down the front of your shin, and frequently you're either going to have, you're either going to suffer with shin splints down this bottom third or up here on this top third. They seem to be the points, and they correspond with just certain muscles in the legs and where they all attach. So there's some scope for that being an accurate theory. They did say, or they used to think, that how much your foot pronated, so if you were an over-pronator, and I have my thoughts about that, but if you're an over-pronator, there's more of a tendency to land more heavily, put more stress through your tibia. And also, weirdly, one of the things that came up in the research, which was a bit of a surprise to me, was prior use of orthotics. So if you have a history of using orthotics, whether you do or not anymore, it can predispose you to shin splints later on. Interesting. Don't know why. Haven't really looked into it. It was just one of those things that popped up. So they did the research again. Overall, there's a link between hip strength and shin pain. Now, for me, your hips and your shins don't exist in isolation. There's lots of other stuff in between. So I think it's always kind of worthwhile looking at the strength of everything that surrounds those things, including the feet, the hips, the glutes, the core, and the muscles, particularly in and around here, sort of balancing those out. A, strengthening them, yep, absolutely, but B, kind of releasing those that need releasing as well. So in terms of recovery then, it is, there's a lot to be said for strengthening the calves, and I've kind of been over that several times. You'll see there's other videos about calf strengthening and the reasons why. Releasing off hamstrings, they're all kind of connected at the back. Strengthening the feet to take the pressure off your calves. So if the foot is stronger and more mobile, there's an argument that the calf doesn't have to work as hard. Whereas if your foot's a frozen block at the end of your leg, then the calf is having to do an awful lot more work. What else? Yep, and then strengthening, strengthening the glutes and the core and all the hip muscles, everything around here, everything to stabilise the trunk. The more control you have when you run, the stronger you are, the more resilient, the more bouncy, then the less stress there is that you're going to be placing on one individual part of the body, in this case being the shins. So kind of trying to share the load a little bit more rather than being just all in that one position. So that's teeny tiny little insight into shin splints. Unfortunately, you can't often run through them. You know, you are going to have to take some time to recover, and the quicker you do that, the better. And just one final thing, without frightening anybody to death, you know, shin splints can develop into stress fractures. So if you are getting unrelenting pain and pain that keeps you awake all night, those kinds of things, then you want to get checked out, get yourself to GP, physio, get them x-rayed, and just make sure that you haven't got a stress factor. And that particularly for women, you know, hormonal issues, if you've had any bony, you know, if you fracture easily, hormonal issues, menopause, even from the hormonal side of things, and that kind of osteopenia, osteoporosis kind of thing. If your nutrition's not on point, so if you've got a history of any kind of eating disorder, or anything like that really, it's worthwhile getting it checked out to make sure it's not stress fracture. That being said, no, don't want to frighten everybody to death, because generally, you know, shin splints from a beginner runner point of view is just that. It's just an overload of the tissues and the bone, and your body's grumpy, and it's asking you to do something about it. Get stronger, get better, and then come back to running. So there you go.